From New York a little earlier this morning. Josh Frydenberg is the federal Liberal member for Kooyong, and he joins us now in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Karina. Good morning, Michael.
Why is the opposition have so many problems with the government's bid for this seat on the Security Council?
Look, we support in principle the concept of running for the Security Council. The United Nations plays a very important role in international affairs. For example, it's helped advance Australia's interest in Afghanistan because our troops have been there under a United Nations mandate. So too in East Timor, as well as the terrorist organisation Jemaah Islamiyah, which was responsible for the Bali bombing, was proscribed as a terrorist organisation under the United Nations. But our concern is about the way the government has gone about this particular campaign. Firstly, it ignored advice from the Department of Foreign Affairs, which said you needed a longer runway to prepare. See, Luxembourg and Finland have been running their campaign since 2001, and we came quite late to the game. Secondly, we've used the Governor-General on a very unusual trip to Africa to start lobbying for votes for Australia. We've used our aid program in order to win votes, seeing a lot more money go towards Caribbean, Latin America, Africa. Sure, there are needs there, but we think that aid should be focused closer to home. And of course we've compromised our values, and when I say that we've compromised our values, that's a major allegation. And I do so because we sent a high-level delegation to the meeting of the non-aligned movement in Tehran just a few weeks ago, and Tehran is a state sponsor of terrorism.
On that point, I asked Senator Carr about that this morning, and he said that Australia has always been represented at that non-aligned movement.
But we have an ambassador in Iran. We should have sent our ambassador, not the Prime Minister's special envoy, Karina. That's who we sent, Joanna Hewitt. And we also sent our ambassador in New York to the United Nations, Gary Quinlan. That was an explicit message to all those other countries present, as well as Iran. We are giving your conference legitimacy. And let's not forget that Ahmadinejad, the head of Iran, has railed frequently against the West and against the United States and called for Israel's destruction. And Australia has sanctions against the Iranian regime, travel sanctions, export sanctions, financial sanctions. And at the same time we're sending a high-level delegation to Iran. It just doesn't make sense.
OK, you say you support getting a seat on the Security Council in principle. How would a coalition government go about this any different based on what you said? You wouldn't spend money, you wouldn't lobby for votes. How would you secure the seat?
Well, Michael, I'm saying if we were to run for the United Nations, of course you need to spend money, but you don't need to compromise your values. And we wouldn't have sent a high-level delegation to Tehran. We would use our aid program to focus on the region. For example, in Papua New Guinea, where we send about $500 million a year, there are still 12,000 children who die in Papua New Guinea under the age of 5 every year. Julie Bishop, my colleague and the Shadow Foreign Affairs spokesman, has talked about the decrepit nature of Port Moresby Hospital. That's where we should be spending our money and our focus and our energies.
Going to the cost, your former boss, the former Foreign Minister Alexander Downer, as you know, took a submission to Cabinet in the Howard government, which costed the bid at $35 million. Isn't there a bit of hypocrisy here in criticising the bill already run up by the Gillard government?
Well, we didn't actually then go and run as Alexander Downer was putting that.
You were prepared to spend $35 million to do it, though.
Well, Alexander Downer had put to the rest of the government, let's have another tilt at the UN, because we had lost that bid in 1996. But at the end of the day, the government decided, and John Howard and his fellow cabinet ministers, that there were other priorities. So you can't say that John Howard was doing anything but looking after the taxpayer when deciding how to spend, you know, what were pretty tight economic conditions post-96.
But Australia's $24 million seems quite a small amount compared to Luxembourg's $120 million that it spent on the bid.
Yeah, well, I actually think $24 million is way under what we've actually spent. I think it will come out over time, Karina, that we've spent a lot more money. And as I said, we've actually increased our aid programs to countries like to countries in Africa and to the Caribbean, to Latin America, and I think that's all directly related to the bid.
As you say, getting a seat on the Security Council would enhance any country's reputation. Sure. Are you worried that the lack of bipartisan support is going to hurt Australia's bid? Some of the countries that are undecided are saying, well, the coalition opposition doesn't support it, let's not vote for Australia.
Well, that's actually not true. I mean, what I'm saying, Michael, is I'd like to see Australia win I really hope we wake up tomorrow to find out that Australia has won, because the United Nations is a significant organisation, World Affairs, both on the security side as well as on the humanitarian side. For example, the World Food Organisation and the World Health Organisation play important roles. But what we're just saying is, let's not give the government carte blanche to go and run a campaign where they do compromise our values. That's our issue, the way they've conducted themselves.
One of the other criticisms that you've laid against how this bid has been run is that the foreign minister has visited countries like Mongolia and not visited countries like India, but we've now just seen the Prime Minister have a 3-day visit to India.
Pretty belated visit, by the way, by our Prime Minister. She's been in office for more than 2 years. India is our 5th largest trading partner and a very important security partner as well. I would have liked to have seen the Prime Minister go there a lot earlier, and we haven't had an Indian Prime Minister sent to Australia since 1986 when Rajiv Gandhi came. And the reason for that is that at the last CHOGM meeting in Perth, Prime Minister Singh actually boycotted the event because at that stage the Gillard government hadn't reversed its opposition to selling uranium to India. So I think the government's got a bit to answer for, Karina, on that.
And finally, you're a close watcher, obviously, of foreign affairs and the machinations they are, of the United Nations Security Council. How do you think it'll go? Will we get over the line?
I think we will, and I'm hoping we do. I think Finland will probably finish first, then I think Australia, followed by Luxembourg.
Joshua Frydenberg, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Karina. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
David Hicks's lawyer